Hear more, listen to the podcast. Just search for Hancock and Kelly.
Democrats profess shock at President Biden's poor performance in Thursday night's debate against former President Trump.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
Calls are now growing louder for Democrats for the president to end his reelection bid. Michael, we've shown the president's struggles repeatedly on this program, talking about them on Sunday mornings. Several of his speeches, he has moments like that. This probably goes beyond the pale, but is it disingenuous for Democrats now to say, oh my gosh, we're so surprised?
No, I don't think so. Well, there are a couple of thoughts here, and it was hard to watch again. I was watching the debate with the three of you. We were on Fox 2, and in the first 15 minutes, I was sick. I wanted to run to the bathroom and throw up. The president may have gotten a little bit better as time went on that night, but the damage was done. This is not a shock to any of us. We've all been watching this president's faculties diminish over the last several years. And this was the one job that Joe Biden had to do. He had to go out there and dispel any of the concern that existed related to his age. Unfortunately, he didn't do it. He compounded it. He made it worse. To be clear, Donald Trump is not the option or the alternative here. It has to be Joe Biden or the Democrats that win. The Democrats have said that that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. If that is the case, and they truly believe that, putting up Joe Biden to defeat that is irresponsible and foolish. They need to make a change.
Biden supporters say just a bad 90 minutes. You know, Barack Obama had a bad debate.
Yeah, right. You know, if I show up here some Sunday and do that, it's going to be the Kelly and somebody else. Look, Joe Biden is going to lose this race. If they persist in keeping him on the ballot, he's going to lose. Why? There aren't enough people in this country who love Donald Trump to elect Donald Trump. But there aren't enough people in this country who loathe Donald Trump to elect Joe Biden. That means there's some gap in the middle that are making a choice between what we just saw last night. Beating Donald Trump ought to be pretty simple. But they're not making it simple. In every targeted U.S. Senate race in the country right now, the Democrat is running ahead of Joe Biden in that state. Even in Missouri, Lucas Kunce is running ahead of Joe Biden. He is a liability to this ticket, as is Kamala Harris. And if they don't make a change, it's political malpractice. But it's looking to me like maybe they won't. They should.
Well, now, the president did rebound a bit the day after the debate. Headlining a campaign rally in North Carolina, he was obviously aware that things did not go well for him in his showdown with Mr. Trump.
I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
Democrats continue to focus on multiple untruths told by Donald Trump during the debate. Who among Democrats, be it Joe Biden or someone else, stands the best chance of beating Trump? John?
Well, anybody but Biden.
Is he beatable still?
Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Not by Joe Biden, I don't think. But could they find somebody that's not that? Yeah. There's plenty of people out there. And Trump is unpopular. You can't argue otherwise. But Biden is unpopular and unfit. And you can make the case, Michael will, that Trump's unfit as well. But just looking at this thing in terms of real politics, that guy is not going to beat Donald Trump.
Who is the person that's going to beat Donald Trump?
I think anybody other than Joe Biden, probably Kamala Harris. There's probably a handful of folks who would have some trouble. But there's governors out there, Governor Beshear of Kentucky, our own Governor Pritzker across the river, Governor Newsom could immediately beat Donald Trump.
But you don't think the vice president?
The problem we have with the vice president's got low approval ratings, and that's one of the quagmires the Democratic Party finds itself in right now, is how do they resolve this issue while continuing to solidify and hold together the base vote of the Democratic Party? This is a less than ideal situation. It was predictable. Fortunately, it's fixable, provided we don't put our heads in the sand. And this idea that the president showed up at a rally the next day and everything's better. Listen, he could do cartwheels with Simone Biles right now. The damage is done.
Still to come on Hancock and Kelly, the owner of one of St. Louis's top restaurants closes down. He's a gay man who says hate is running him out of Missouri.